Look under almost any well-ridden motorcycle, and you'll find it. A small bell, hanging low, close enough to the road to collect grit. It's called a guardian bell, and there's one rule about it that most websites get wrong. So let's start with the answer. You're not supposed to buy it for yourself. A guardian bell carries its full power only when someone gives it to you, because someone wanted you to come home safe. This is the real tradition behind the bell, where it came from, the rules that actually matter, and the ones the internet just made up. So what is it? A guardian bell is a small metal bell, pewter, brass, or sterling silver, about an inch tall, hung from the lowest point of a bike's frame. You'll hear a dozen names for it. Gremlin bell, spirit bell, ride bell, biker bell. Same charm, same job. And the job is this. The constant ringing is said to trap road gremlins, the little invisible troublemakers riders blame for potholes, blown tires, and the random bad luck that shows up mid-ride. Is it superstition? Completely. But so's knocking on wood, and most of us still do it. To understand the bell, you have to understand the gremlin. And that word has a real documented origin in the sky. Royal Air Force pilots coined it in the 1920s. The earliest known printed use is a poem in the aviation journal Aeroplane, dated the 10th of April, 1929, written by a pilot stationed on Malta. For RAF crews, gremlins were the invisible culprits behind everything that failed for no reason. Engines cutting out, controls jamming, instruments going haywire mid-flight. Then the myth went mainstream, through a name you know. Roald Dahl, the author of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, was also a real RAF fighter pilot. In 1943, Dahl published The Gremlins, his very first book, commissioned by Walt Disney. Eleanor Roosevelt loved it enough to read it aloud to her grandchildren. Here's where documented history hands off to lore. The story writers tell is that some pilots hung small bells in their cockpits to keep the gremlins away. And when those airmen came home and traded cockpits for motorcycles, the tale goes, they hung the same bells from their frames, and the tradition rolled out onto the open road. But the story most riders actually pass down isn't about pilots at all. It's a legend, and every old-timer swears their version is the true one. The year is 1965, give or take. A silver-bearded biker is riding a desert highway near the Mexican border on a cold December night, his saddlebags stuffed with small toys. He's headed to an orphanage where he volunteers. Road gremlins swarm his bike. He goes down. The saddlebags tear open and toys scatter across the asphalt. 30 miles back, two riders camp for the night hear a strange ringing drifting across the desert. Small bells mixed in among those scattered toys. They follow the sound, and they fight the gremlins off. The old man takes two of the bells, ties them to strips of leather, and gives one to each rider. Hang these on your bikes, he tells them, and pass them on the same way, always as a gift, never bought for yourself. True? Almost certainly not, but that's not really the point. The legend exists to carry the one rule that is real. The bell is something you give to someone you care about. And the idea underneath all of it is far older than motorcycles, older than airplanes. For 1,000 years, medieval Europe rang bells to drive off evil. Demons, storms, plague. The church didn't just allow it. It blessed the bells in a ceremony people called the baptism of bells. There were dead bells, rung to chase evil spirits away from the newly departed. You can see one in the Bayeux Tapestry at the funeral of a king. Some church bells were even inscribed with a promise: I torment demons. So when a rider hangs a bell to keep the road's bad luck at bay, they're doing something humans have done for a very long time. New machine, very old instinct. Now, the rules. The internet has inflated these into lists of 15 or 20. Strip out the noise, and the riding community really only agrees on 5. Rule 1, the big one. It has to be a gift. The giver doesn't even have to ride. A parent, a partner, a kid. The power comes from someone genuinely worrying about your safety. Rule 2, hang it at the lowest point of the frame, 6 to 8 inches off the ground. The Gremlins live down on the road, so the bell has to be down there with them. Rule 3, ideally, the giver hangs it for you. That completes the circle. The intent passes through the act of placing it on the bike. Rule 4, never touch another rider's bell. A stolen bell loses all its power the instant it's taken. And the tradition says the trapped gremlins transfer straight to the thief. Rule 5, when you sell the bike, the bell comes off. It protects the rider, not the machine. Keep it, move it to your next bike, or gift it onward, and start the whole tradition over. And if it ever falls off on its own, tradition says it sacrificed itself to catch a nasty gremlin. Don't overthink it. Get another, gift it again, and keep riding. Then there are the rules that aren't real, mostly invented in the last decade, often by sites selling bells. You can only have one bell. Not true. Plenty of riders hang several, one from each person who gave them. You must polish it and think of fallen riders. A nice sentiment, but nobody polished a dirt-caked bell in 1965. It must face a certain direction. No, it just needs to hang free and ring. That's the only placement rule beyond as low as you can. Read like a warm, grounded storyteller at golden hour. Someone who has spent years around bikes and the people who ride them. Measured and unhurried, plain-spoken, a little affectionate. Not a hard sell pitch, not a horror voiceover. The voice of someone telling you something that matters, because they want you to get home safe. And the design on the bell? Riders pick one that means something to them. A skull is mortality awareness. Ride like every mile counts. The same memento mori idea that made skull rings a rider staple. An eagle stands for freedom and independence, a favorite among veterans. The koi means perseverance and transformation, from a Chinese legend, beloved in Japan, where a carp that fights upstream becomes a dragon. The all-seeing eye is vigilance, a ward that watches the road when your attention slips. And the Tibetan vajra is the indestructible thunderbolt, an ancient symbol of protection that can't be broken. The metal doesn't change the tradition, but a solid sterling silver bell will still be ringing under that frame long after a cheap pewter casting has corroded away. Here's the part that makes the whole superstition make sense. Per mile ridden, a motorcyclist is nearly 28 times more likely to die in a crash than someone in a car. That's the real number from 2023. No little bell changes that math. But the bell was never really about the bell. It's a way of saying, I want you to come home. Small enough to hang and heavy enough to mean it. So if there's a rider in your life, now you know the one rule that matters. And if you ride, maybe it's time someone gave you one. The full tradition, the rules, and every design are in the Guardian Bell collection. Link below. Ride safe.